Hello, everyone, and welcome to Building Our Village with Tender Care PPEC. We are here with Brian Stevens from Life Planning for Special Needs. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Good. So, tell us more about your story and how you got involved in the special needs community.
Yeah, actually, I first got involved when I met my wife. Um, at the time, I was a single dad of five, and she was a single mom with one. And our son, was 3 years old at the time and nonverbal, um, a friendly little guy, but yeah, he didn't speak. Uh, was in the process of being diagnosed with autism and moderate cognitive impairment, and so it was really an answer in prayer for both of us because I thought, who would ever marry a guy that had five kids already? And she thought the same thing about her situation. Who would ever marry a woman that has a son who will never leave the nest? But we did. And, taking on that responsibility of a son who will always need our support, um, that's really what got me heading down that path.
I love how it was something that started within your family and how you started with it, and that's always the best way when your heart's in it. Um, so tell us a little bit about what you do and how you do things.
Okay. Um, my business is kind of developing into two separate streams right now. One side of it is more of a financial consulting, one-on-one, in-depth, helping people to eliminate risk, fees, and taxes in the way they save and park their money. The other side of it can be a much more do-it-yourself, and that's the life planning for special needs, and it's life insurance, really, if you want to boil it down to something simple. Um, a lot of times people don't realize, though, how complicated that subject really is. They don't know what they don't know about it.
Right. So why is it important to have life insurance for someone or for family who has special needs for that person or the caregivers?
With any family, you want to be ready for the unexpected in case something happens. Um, with a family with special needs, the thing has already happened that's created an extra financial burden, an extra financial responsibility. Um, depending, every family's situation is different, but depending on what those needs look like, I don't just have to, myself as a special needs dad, I don't just have to worry about getting our other kids through high school and college and then we're going to be okay. Regardless of what happens to me, I got to think about long term, not just preparing for my wife and I for retirement, but for how we're going to continue to support our son, through retirement and then beyond after we pass away. And so it becomes a situation where the need isn't just in case I die early, but it's no matter what, we're going to need a strong financial plan, and insurance is a big part of that because, on the one hand, it protects against the unexpected. And on the other hand, there's a lot of ways it can be used to prepare for a good financial future in a very efficient way.
I feel like that's something a lot of families feel like they don't have the ability to right now, or they don't see into the future and why it's beneficial for the future. Do you find that a lot?
Yeah, it's especially, times like right now where the economy is tightening back up. I a lot of times I've spoken to my wife and other people who said, sometimes it feels a little bit like we're in 2006 or 2007. And I hate to say that, but I've heard other people say the same thing. And anybody out there that went through 08, 09, they know what I'm talking about.
The funniest thing is I was just telling my son that last night.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things where it's as the belt starts to tighten on the budget and people start to feel like they don't have money for extras. Um, and sometimes that's what this gets put into that bucket of being an extra. Um, and I think in a lot of ways that's the fault of the marketing in the industry because for so many years they've focusing on just getting the cheapest policy you can for the highest amount you can get for that, even if it's just a 10-year term or whatever. I don't want to get into too much inside baseball on it, but The marketing really has driven that price consciousness to the point that people lost sight of what it is actually there for and what it can really do. So a lot of times it can be either first on the chopping block, or it can be something that maybe somebody doesn't have. They know they need it and they keep putting it off. So that is a real issue, especially when things are getting tight in the economy.
Wow. Yeah, I really like how you explained it. You're saying like for a typical family, it's a lot of what if to get life insurance. Like, oh, it's just what if I die. But for someone with a special needs member, it's more no, I kind of need this because they depend on me. So I really liked how you explained that. And how often should families review and update their insurance policies?
Well, the rule of thumb in the industry is once a year. You should definitely have like a yearly review. And actually, it could be more frequent than that. It mostly depends on your situation, especially if something changes in your housing. You buy a house or you sell a house. You end up switching jobs, getting a raise, and kind of having another child. Any kind of major life change is a good time to sit down and say, okay, do we have enough coverage, or do we have more than we need now in our point in our life, or what needs to change there? But at least once a year, you should look at it with at least yourself, and really any good agent is going to reach out to you once a year just to make sure, touch bases and make sure everything's still good.
That's good to know. I don't think I've reviewed mine in 5, 6 years since I put it in
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that. It just kind of, it's just one of those things that just keep going. It's not a giant policy, but it's not something I don't even remember how much it is because
Yeah.
it's been that long.
Exactly what I was going to say is I don't know how many times I've sat down with people and they say, oh, yeah, I have a policy this much from this company. And I say, well, go ahead and grab it out. Let's take a look at it. And turns out it's not that amount, and it might not even be that company. And because it's one of those things where we don't like to think about it. And you kind of think, well, I got it taken care of. It gets put into a drawer somewhere and left there. And people forget.
Yeah. Do you have any experience working with special needs families and um, any either ways you've helped them or success stories of working with them?
Yeah. Not to get in, I mean, it's not a tragic story or anything like that, but one client comes to mind who he was kind of on the fence. He had, I think it was close to $500,000, if I remember right, through a work policy, um, and kind of felt like that might be enough. And as I was speaking with him about it, I said, well, one thing to keep in mind with a work policy, and this is true, a lot of people don't think about this, is yeah, it's very inexpensive. You should definitely take advantage of it if you can get a policy through your employer. Um, but it's kind of like a company car. If you leave the company, the car stays with the company. And it's the same thing with most work policies. When you leave the company, the policy stays with them. And even besides that, uh, being a group policy like those are, especially in times like this, if a company decides that the company is going to start tightening down their belt on their budget, they can cancel the entire group. They can't cancel individual people, but if they decide to drop that benefit, they can drop it. And so it was weighing on him. And one of the nice things, like I'd mentioned before about the do-it-yourself side, is a person doesn't even really have to talk to me if they don't want to. They can just go to the website, read up articles explaining about like how much you should have, what different types are, all this stuff, and then they can get a quote. And if they like what they see, they can purchase it all right online, or if they want to play with the numbers, they can adjust things up and down. And so he ended up, it was like 10 or 11 at night, and he was thinking about it, and he told me literally got on his phone laying in bed and decided to put a little extra in place, and just felt more at ease, saying, you know what, at least now I got something that's mine that I own outside of work, and a little bit extra to where I feel comfortable, with what I have. So, and that peace of mind is really the important part for us, that are living.
Mm-hmm.
is just having that peace of mind, knowing that if something does happen, everybody will be okay.
Now, say something did happen, and how does that work afterwards? Let's say to make sure that that goes to take care of your child.
Okay, well, there's a few different sides to that. Um, First of all, a big part of that is going to be when you're setting the policy up and choosing beneficiaries, and choosing contingent beneficiaries, and especially with a special needs family, that becomes really important. Uh, for example, with my wife and I, she's my beneficiary, I'm her beneficiary, but if we both die in a car accident together, there has to be a contingent beneficiary that's going to get that money. And it really, in like almost 100% of the cases, it should definitely not be our special needs child, even if he is, above the age of 18. Now, with our son, his cognitive impairment is to the point where we would never think about putting him on. But even if someone is like, say they're mentally, cognitively, they're 100% there, their needs are completely physical. If you leave that money to them as a beneficiary, or if you don't name a beneficiary and say it's your only child, then the laws of probate, and I'm not a lawyer, so go talk to a lawyer about it, but they're going to kick in and they're going to automatically be the beneficiary of that. And you can jeopardize their government aid, government benefits,
Oh.
by all of a sudden they have this huge influx of cash and they got to figure out what to do with it quickly, um, so that it doesn't end up negating months and months, possibly years worth of benefits. So in the very beginning, you have to have a good conversation with somebody that understands the situation, about beneficiaries. Um, another big part of that is going to be if it is a situation where you're concerned about who's going to get this money and take care of our kid. Um, maybe you don't have family that would automatically be the default, a grandma, an aunt, an uncle, somebody like that to leave it to. Then you should start having a serious conversation about a special needs trust as a way to have it set up so the money would actually go to the trust, and the trust, the trustee, the way it's set up to be managed, that would guarantee that it's going to be handled in the way you want it to be handled to take care of your child.
And you also work with trusts as well, right?
I'm not a lawyer, so I can't set up a trust, but
Right.
there's two ways that I can help people with that. One is through coaching and education to help people walk through the process. And then another way is that a lot of people don't realize you can set up a trust on your own. You don't have to have a lawyer to do it. I'm actually in the process myself of going through that. There's actually a really good book. If I can remember their names properly, it's Kevin Urbach and then Jessica Farinas Jones, or Jones Farinas. I might have it backwards. Two lawyers out of California, and it's actually, I have a copy of it here. Let me turn around and grab it so I don't misquote the title. It's Special Needs Trust, Protect Your Child's Financial Future. And the 10th edition is the current one. That's what it looks like if you go and look for it on Amazon. And it reads like a textbook. It's like 300 pages, but it's very, very detailed, and it has links to downloadable forms. It's like less than $30 for that book, and somebody could take that book, read through it, download the forms. You can start your own third-party special needs trust. Now, you may decide you want to have a lawyer look at it when you're done too. I mean, that might be a good thing. Most people probably would.
Mm-hmm.
But that can be one of the hurdles for people when they're thinking about something like a special needs trust. They might think, well, I don't have a lot of money to put in it right now. Well, you don't need money to put in it. You just, especially if you have life insurance or a house or anything like that, anything that's going to value over $2,000 that may end up left to your special needs child, you definitely want to think about it. And you don't have to drop $2, $3, I've heard even as high as $5,000 to have a lawyer do it for you. If that's the only thing stopping you, then you can check out something like that. And if someone wants to have someone to actually kind of walk through that process with them, my wife, she doesn't call it this. I thought she called it this. Is actually a term, body doubling. I don't know if you've heard about body doubling.
Hmm.
A psychological principle where something becomes easier to do when you're doing it with somebody else.
Okay.
So like with my wife, it's, anything we're doing around the house or out in the yard, it's, even if I'm not really pulling my weight with helping her, just the fact that I'm there,
Hmm.
that she gets more done. So anyway, that's a lot of times the way financial coaching works is just going through it with somebody. I can't give you legal advice, tax advice, any of that kind of thing, but I can help you find the answers, and that's more the one-on-one side of what I help people with.
Uh, when you think of setting up a trust, I mean, that's your first thought is, it's expensive. I
Hmm.
don't have that type of money. But the way you just broke it down and said you can buy that book and get the forms and start it yourself, that's something that I never knew was possible. And
Yeah,
I'm sure a lot of families don't know that either. Have you found that to be the case?
yeah. Almost
Yeah.
everybody has the same reaction, that they either don't believe it's possible, and they'll even try to argue that it's not, or they're just very surprised. Now, I will caution, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but I will caution that if a special needs individual has already come into a large chunk of money through an inheritance or through a lawsuit settlement, the type of trust you would need there would be a first person special needs trust, because they already have the money. I would definitely recommend consulting a lawyer about that situation. Those are
Right.
much more complicated, and much more urgent, because you got to get that money out of their hands within 30 days as
Right.
understanding of it. And
At that time, could that, I mean, this is off basis a little bit, but could the money that is being awarded, could that be used for the attorney to generate the trust?
I believe it could. You'd have to talk to the attorney and accountant about that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
my understanding of it is that as long as the money is either spent or put into a trust, that month that it's received. And again, consult
Right.
an accountant, an attorney about the details on that. I don't want to overstep my bounds there, but
Right.
that's a tricky situation, and that's why it's so important to make sure that these things are put in place ahead of time.
Hmm.
That way, you don't get into that situation, because
Right.
it's so much easier to just do it ahead of time. Do a third party trust where the parent, grandparent, other loved one who has an interest in seeing the child do well sets it up, and that way it's already there. So if anything like that's coming in, instead of it coming to the individual with special needs, it goes straight to that third party trust.
And so have you seen where that's been set up and set it up or help set, guide people?
As far as the third party trust,
Yeah.
it's actually very common. It's
Okay.
yeah, the third party special needs trust is the more common of the two, and so that's most people. That's what they do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that for a lot of parents would give them that that sense of protection, or knowing that their child's going to be taken care of, and you know they think that the cost factor is something they can't do. But if they're able to get a book, get some help from others, it makes it a lot more feasible. Um, how many times have you seen families put this into place, or does it
Boy,
vary state by state,
it
or
absolutely, yeah.
yeah,
As far as a number of times, I mean, I couldn't even really give a number.
yeah,
It's a very common way of planning. Um,
yeah,
it does vary from state to state, and that actually reminds me of something also. But every state is different. The trust laws are governed state by state. So if I'm here in Florida, so what I'm saying may be off base if you're in Arizona, California,
Hmm.
wherever.
right,
And I do know for sure, and this is the thing you reminded me of, is that in the state of Louisiana, even a third party special needs trust, from what I've heard from others, it's a bit more complicated. And so you definitely, most people would choose to get an attorney to help them with it, make sure it's
yeah,
done. And I don't know why, but that Louisiana, for some reason, is an oddball like that.
yeah. I think they're oddball on a lot of different laws. um, yeah. So, what advice would you give to a family who's thinking about considering getting life insurance and setting up a trust for their family?
Everybody's situation is different. So I can't really give anybody specific advice for their situation without speaking to them.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say this, that in my opinion, most families that have a child with special needs, almost all, if not all, would benefit from some sort of life insurance, even if you don't think you need it. It can be used for tax advantages, for growth without risk, for minimizing fees, for families that are more concerned with paying the mortgage or paying the rent, and just month to month living. Very, very important. And then in almost all cases, a third party trust would be beneficial. It may not be something that you have to put in place right away, but it should definitely be on your radar. You should definitely start looking into it, and to be able to make that decision sooner rather than later, if you do want to end up doing something like that.
Great information.
So even if, they think they might not need it, they should still just, check to see what, they can get from having life insurance, basically.
Yeah, and the same thing with the trust, because in that book they talk about this also, that with a third party special needs trust, the person, you might think they don't even necessarily need it. Maybe they're having some sort of special needs that you think will end up being cured. You think they're going to be okay. There's no harm in putting it together. You don't have to end up putting any money into it. You don't have to leave all your money to it when you pass, but just having it there and ready in case you do need it. Depending on each person's situation, that's an option too.
So we found you through the Facebook group, and you were sharing great information. It looked like you were trying to help and as many people as possible, and bringing value, which is fantastic. I always find that so beneficial. You have a book coming out, is that right?
Yeah, I'm working on a book. That I got the cover designed now, that cover, and working on the content on the inside, getting everything ready. I really don't want to back myself into a corner with a release date yet. But I'm definitely going to be putting updates from time to time on my Facebook about that. And it was it really get started as a question, just to one of the groups, to a couple of the groups that I'm a member of, and I just I'm thinking about writing a book about special needs trusts and how to set them up and what type, the different kinds, alternatives. If you wanted to not do a trust, what else could you do, or how to fund it, or different things, and just kind of asking the question, hey, is there any interest in this? And if so, like, what out of these topics interests people? And I was surprised by the number of people that reached back out to me with interest and with questions, and a couple of good conversations that moved over into the private messages with some people. And I just thought, there's definitely a need here. And part of it too is the idea that, not everybody's going to sit down and read a 300-page textbook on it or whatever. And my book is going to be, I don't want to really say the Cliff's Notes version, but it's going to be smaller. I want it to be a small enough book that somebody could stick it in their purse or stick it in their lunchbox, take it with them to work, read a little bit on lunch, take it with them to a doctor's appointment or to wherever, and just get a good, simple foundation in what it is, what are the possibilities, what are the pitfalls, what are the myths around it, what are the mistakes people make, and just to start that conversation and kind of open people's eyes to the fact that this might actually be something possible for you. It might actually be something helpful for you. And then also when it comes to funding it, because I think a lot of times we hear phrases like trust fund baby and stuff like that, and we think, oh, a trust is only for rich people, to kind of dispel that myth and to show people how, if they plan right for it, they can actually put a sizable amount of money aside that'll end up in that trust. Because especially with inflation, the way it's going, if you're thinking about planning for your retirement and then planning for your child's retirement years of their life after you pass on, you're going to need a pretty sizable amount of money to do that.
Do you have any advice on that? When to start thinking about that, and what's the best time, and what type of like things you start putting in place to put things into a trust?
Yeah, as early as possible. It's so true that with compounding growth over time, the the time component in that is so important. It makes such a huge difference. Um, there's the pretty common knowledge, the rule of 72 in the financial world. So just not that I'm giving investment advice here, but if somebody had something that was making 7.2% gain year after year with no losses, then every 10 years their principal is going to double. Well, if you start doubling like that, then the difference between year 30 and year 40 of a plan like that is huge, huge difference. And so, as early as possible, if you have a young child and they're diagnosed as being on the spectrum with autism or with, that's always what I default to because that's our son. He has autism. But and whatever the special need is, as soon as you need to really get serious about thinking about what's our long-term plan for our retirement years and for them after we pass away and start preparing for that.
Now, a lot of people think again that it requires a lot of money. Could you give some insight on how you could start with small increments?
Yeah, anything is better than nothing. That is true. Anything is better than nothing. It does. If you're going to be serious about it, it takes discipline. It might take rearranging what you're doing with your money and making some hard decisions, just depending on your income. Or it might take getting creative about trying to find out ways to make more income. But one of the biggest things that a lot of people don't think of is no matter how much you're starting with, whether it's a small amount or a large amount that you're putting away for this future need, if you can avoid the risk of loss, that's huge. Because what a lot of people don't realize is, as things, say you're using a traditional instrument like a 401k, 403b, stuff like that, stuff that's in the market, you're exposed to that risk. And so it goes up, 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 and then it comes way down. Then it starts going up again. Well, it takes a while to get back to break even. And a lot of people don't realize that there's other strategies out there that you can implement where you don't have those dips, where you participate in gains, but you don't have any losses. And so you end up farther ahead in the long run. And it also helps to alleviate the temptation that a lot of people fall prey to, where they try to hang in there and try to hang in there when things are dropping, and then it gets so scary that they end up pulling it out and realizing that loss, and then they try to start over too late when things are on the way back up. I forget where exactly the study was, but the average investor, just average person investing for retirement, they end up really only realizing around a 3 or 3.5% gain return over the long term because of those ups and downs.
Right.
So that's a big part of it right there.
What are some options other than the 401k or something like that you could start using to build a trust?
It's more advanced ways of using very particular types of life insurance instruments.
Okay.
There are certain types of policies that, when they're structured properly and when they're funded properly, they take advantage of IRS tax codes that allow it to grow over time, participate in gains, avoid losses, very, very real tax advantages. Fees become less and less over time compared to other ways of taking care of your money, as long as it's done right. If you don't set it up right, it can blow up in your face in multiple different ways. But as long as it's done right, then it's a really great way to go. And to get into all the details would really take like an hour and a half sit down with somebody,
Right.
going over their numbers, going over possibilities. And even before getting to that point, probably like a 5 to 15 minute conversation just to find out, like, is this even something that might possibly work for them? Because if not, there's no sense in exploring it. But if it,
Right.
then sitting down and actually going over the real numbers for them, on how that could play out. And it's really, the insurance company does a lot of the brunt work as far as how it's going to really play out with the full illustration showing the values into the future, and a lot of data to go over. But it's something that uh, a lot of people don't realize is out there. And a big part of that is because they don't teach you this kind of stuff in general public school. When it comes to
Mm-hmm.
personal finance, there's a lot they leave out. The top 1% or the top 1% of the 1% out there, they learn different strategies. And so
Yeah.
I've been fortunate enough to learn some of that from some people that know how to do it. And if anything gets to where I feel like I'm getting in over my head, then I just bring them in and let them take care of that one. But yeah, it's
So if anybody was listening and they wanted to know more about how they could set something like this up with the insurances to feed a trust, that's something you could help them.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's actually the area where I'm licensed and I can actually give you legal advice in that area. Uh,
Right.
it's hard to give too much details in a situation like this where it's,
Oh yeah, no, totally understand. But if someone said, "Oh, I'm, it's something I've thought about, I want to do, but I don't know how it's possible, but
yeah,
oh, I could do it with a life insurance policy from, Brian," then maybe it's something they'd think about.
yep, yep, exactly. There's no cookie cutter solution, but we'll get together, we'll put together a personalized plan on what could be possible for somebody, and just go from there.
That's awesome. I think a lot of families could benefit from you know at least hearing that out and seeing what's possible for them.
Yep, exactly.
And how can people find you?
Probably the easiest way is if they go to lp4sn.com. So it's
Okay.
the letters LP,
Mhm.
the number four, the letters SN.com. That'll actually forward you to my business Facebook page at the time, currently. Depending on when you watch this, our website might be back up. It's going through a facelift right now. And actually, I've discovered that a Facebook business page can be a great way to tie everything together in one spot. So if
Oh yeah.
Yes,
you
it
go there,
can.
they'll find a link to sign up if they want information about my book, to get put on a mailing list for that and a newsletter that comes
Oh,
out, or a link to my personal Facebook page, which is I talk a little bit more about the financial consulting side of things over there.
okay.
They'll find a link to the website where they can literally just go get a quote and get their own insurance, anything up to a $2 million policy without even talking to me or anybody. Um, that's on that lp4sn.com. You'll find a link there for that. And I even have my phone number on there, my business cell phone, and it's 727 So send me a text or give me a call, leave a message. I will very rarely pick that phone up on the first ring. So definitely leave a message and send me a text, and I will get back to you. If I don't get back to you within 24 hours, then start looking for somebody else because I'm dead.
Oh.
Well, I love how you gave your phone number out there, and um, you know texting and everything is the best way. I
Oh
feel
yeah.
these days it's so
Yeah.
much, and people sometimes are afraid of a phone call, but they don't have a problem sending a text.
Mhm.
I've gotten to be the same way myself. It's
Yeah,
it's so funny.
yeah,
Yeah,
um,
and I also like that your website basically has everything on it because you do so many different things. So I'm glad that you have a place where everything's in one spot for people to look at.
Yeah, and I purposefully
That's
don't post a whole lot on there very often because I don't want it to get buried in a bunch of fluff. So
okay.
if people go there and they just start looking down through the posts, they'll find what they're looking for.
That's
Very
great.
cool.
Keep us updated on your book.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear about that and help you promote that too. And thank you for coming on. Wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure a lot of families can find this beneficial. From setting up the trust to funding the trust and life insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And again, I'm just going to plug that book on Amazon one last time too. And,
Oh yeah.
and I'm not even giving a link, so it's not like I'm making any money off that. But that's a great resource. If somebody's a reader and they want to sit down and feel like they're in a 100 level college class, they can grab that book, and if they have trouble with it and they want to reach out to me, then I'll go through it with them.
Oh,
what was the name of the book again?
It was let me grab it so I don't misquote it. It's Special Needs Trusts Protect Your Child's Financial Future, and it's by Adage, which is Urbatsch, and Farinas Jones, and everything's backwards on there, but that's kind of what it looks like. So
all right,
it'll come if you search for Special Needs Trusts on Amazon. It's like one of the first ones that comes up.
oh, okay.
$27
nice.
change.
Well, it sounds like it's well worth it. And sometimes it's not just about you; it's about helping others and giving them the resources. And that's what we've found with this. Giving people resources and spreading knowledge. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. That's what inspired me to reach out about my idea of my book, was just thinking like, this is a great book, but I kind of feel like we need a more entry level.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Great.
I love it. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you.
And thank you, everyone, for tuning in.